Welcome to the Employee to Boss podcast, a podcast for everyone with an entrepreneurial spirit. Every week, I am joined by successful guests in all different industries and stages of business who will share what their experience was like transitioning from employee to boss. Expect action steps, inspiration, and hot topics. This is a resource for you if you're wanting to start a business, go all in on your side hustle, get to the next level in your thriving business, or just hear what it's like taking the leap to becoming your own boss. Business can be very lonely, but it does not have to be. I'm your host, Hayleigh Hayhurst, the owner of Espresso Podcast Production, a full-service podcast production agency specializing in editing, marketing, and strategy. Let's dive into today's topic. Hello, welcome back to another episode of the Employee to Boss podcast. I'm your host, Hayleigh Hayhurst, and today I'm joined with an amazing guest. Her name is Laura Sinclair. Laura is a mom of two, CEO of the boutique social media marketing agency, the LJ Social Agency, and the host of This Mother Means Business podcast. In this episode, we talk all about how she started her business, why she supports mothers, and how she created a community to support mothers. We also talk a lot about marketing strategies and how she's built multiple businesses and now mentors other people, other moms specifically, on how to do the same. So a little bit about Laura. She believes that you and your business deserve to be seen. With over a decade of experience building digital marketing strategies for some of the world's biggest brands, Laura has dedicated her life's work to teaching women how to grow their business and take big leaps into their entrepreneurial dreams through her podcast, courses, and events. Laura went from corporate dropout to multi-six-figure business owner. Her journey ranges from public relations, sports marketing, sponsorship marketing, and social media management to nutrition coach, gym owner, women's event host, community builder, author, podcast host, investor, and CEO. This episode is amazing, and it is great for moms and anyone who's not a mom. Laura shares a lot of advice for new business owners, along with how she has reached multi-six figures in her business. So there's a lot to get out of this episode. If you want to connect with either Laura or I, or both of us, all of our links are in the show notes. I hope that you enjoy this episode, and let's dive right in. Hey, Laura, thank you so much for joining me on the Employee to Boss podcast. I am so excited to be talking with you today.
Thanks so much for having me. I cannot wait to dive in.
I know, this is going to be so fun. So if you want to start off by introducing yourself and telling us a little bit more about you, the audience would love to learn more.
Yeah, awesome. So my name is Laura Sinclair. I am Canadian. I live about an hour outside of Toronto, Canada, for anyone that wants to do a little geography, look up where that is. But I am a business and marketing mentor for early stage female entrepreneurs. I work a lot with moms because I am a mom myself. I have a 7-year-old and a 3-year-old, and really helping women to get their business seen. Really, the core belief that I have is that you and your business deserve to be seen. And so everything that I do really roots through that, helping entrepreneurs get their businesses in front of new audiences and to do it in a way that helps them actually convert. And the way that I support people and mentor people is through mentorship, my mastermind. I do events, and I also have a podcast called This Mother Means Business.
Amazing. So I would also love to learn more about your journey from employee to boss. So I know that you have a really cool story of how you got to where you are and then eventually niched down to working with moms. So if you wanted to share that, I'd love to hear like what that journey actually looked like.
Yeah, it's a long and winding journey. And whenever I start telling it, I'm like, buckle up a little bit because we're going to go on a little roller coaster. So I started my career in public relations. And so growing up, it was very much like, you are going to go to school, you're going to go to university, and then you're going to work for somebody else until you retire, at which point then you can enjoy some freedom in your life. I didn't grow up in a family of entrepreneurs. Everybody in my family very much like checked the boxes and work for other people. And that's fine. It's fine if that's what you want to choose. But I was always very uncomfortable. I was always kind of looking for what the next thing was. So I started in PR. I shifted over to marketing. I had some really cool jobs. I got to work in sports marketing, do some sponsorship marketing, did some like Olympics, some stuff around the Olympics, worked for one of the biggest luxury automotive companies in the world. I got to do some really cool things, but always was kind of like, this isn't really for me. Like, it was always just kind of never really settled. I never really felt like I was landed in the place that I was supposed to be. And so in 2015, I ended up quitting my corporate job and I actually went to buy a CrossFit gym in a CrossFit gym for 5 years. So I went from employee to boss very quickly. And then in March of 2020, when the world shut down for 2 weeks out of an abundance of caution, we all know the rest of that story. I was 8 weeks pregnant with my now almost 4-year-old son. And gyms in Canada had a bit of a rough go during the pandemic. We were closed for a very long time. And so we kind of just made the decision at the end of 2020, looking at, our membership was almost cut in half at the gym. My husband's a firefighter. We were kind of like, do we want to do this? Like, do we want to spend the next 5 years trying to rebuild our business back up to where it was? Or do we need to make another change? And so we decided to close the gym at the end of 2020. And at that point, I had a 3-month-old baby and was not about to go back to work after I'd been an entrepreneur or to work for somebody else after I've been an entrepreneur for 6 years. And that's my goal is to like never have to go back to the corporate world. And so I just kind of merged my two lives. I started helping entrepreneurs, small business owners use social media, market themselves better. And it's kind of ebbed and flowed over the last, which I'm sure we'll talk about today, but ebbed and flowed over the last 3.5 years as I've started to build my online business and really carve out the space that I want to be. So that's like the very condensed version of how I found myself going from employee to boss.
No, it's very cool. So, that is quite a journey of,
Mhm.
being in corporate, having all these cool jobs, and then starting your own, and then the pandemic. And that's a story that, is unique, but also a lot of us in the pandemic had to switch and see like
Yeah,
what our strengths are, what our weaknesses are. We really had to get true about what we wanted to do as entrepreneurs. And so I think it's really awesome that you went all in and decided to not only help women with their marketing, but also you have a social media marketing agency. So
I do.
you
Yeah.
mentor and you have done for you services.
Yeah.
So when you were transitioning away from the gym with your 3-month-old and all the craziness in the world, what were some steps that you took?
Yeah, so for me, it was like I was lucky coming into the online space. The online space is an interesting world, and starting a business is interesting because a lot of people come into starting a business, whether it's online space or not, truly with like the skill that they have. Like they're really good at their one thing. And I was good at my one thing, and I also knew how to market a business. I also understood branding. I also understood visibility. So I came into it with a little bit of like an edge that a lot of people don't have. And
Yeah.
so when we talk, you see in the online space, people say things like, oh, I made X amount of dollars in this very short window of time. I could say something like that, but that wouldn't really be true because I had, 15 years of both corporate and entrepreneurial experience rolling into becoming, into my online business. And so to sort of step back into, what my first step was, I was definitely in a unique position in that I needed to make money.
Yeah.
And I was like, I have no income. I've just closed my business. I have been living, assuming like I had, this is a multi six figure gym that I'm running. We were making good money. And so I had to make money. And so it started with me asking myself, what's the easiest way for me to do that? What is the thing that I'm already good at, that I already know how to do, that I can help people with? And so it really just started with me identifying that because I was in this position where I was like, okay, I got to figure this out. So for me, it was social media. And I knew part of the reason that my gym was so successful was because I knew how to market it.
Mm.
And so I knew how to get people in the door. I knew how to use social media to fill the funnel in my business. And in doing so, this was a CrossFit gym. And so I had attracted a lot of entrepreneurs. A lot of entrepreneurs attract like CrossFit. They like sort of that. They like entrepreneurs in general like things that are like designed to like they like a challenge. They like feeling like they're achieving goals and moving the needle. And so there were a lot of entrepreneurs that were members in our community in the gym. And I had seen that they were good at what they do, but terrible at filling the funnel. Like for me, one of the light bulb moments is there was members that were, I think they did like cabinet refinishing. And I remember they said something to me like, we spent $10,000 on local television ads and we didn't get any clients. And I remember thinking to myself, I wish you had come and told me that you were considering spending $10,000 on local television ads, and I would have told you, please don't do that. Like, there are
Right.
so many better things that you could be doing with 10 grand to market your business. And so I had this awareness about it where it was like, okay, I know this is a problem. I know this is something I'm good at. And so it started with that, identifying what I could even sell, right? And I knew I wanted to be in the service space rather than going the product route. And then number 2 was just like, okay, now I'm gonna talk about this thing. I'm gonna get loud about it. And it literally just started with me creating a little Instagram account and starting to put some content out there. And
Mhm.
I think what people don't always realize when you're starting a business, the people that are going to pay you first are going to be people that you know or connected to people that you know. And so sometimes people will come to me and they'll say, well, like it's just my friends and family that have bought from me so far. And I'm like, great, you're doing the thing that happens with all business owners. Like, I don't know anybody who started a business, certainly one that's like service based, that whose first purchasers weren't their mom or like, someone they know. Like, that's normal. That's a normal part of it. And so for me, it was just like, hey, announcing to the people that already knew me and loved me that I'm doing this thing. And my first 3 clients were people that I was connected to in some capacity. So
Mhm.
they either knew me from running my gym, they had known me from like 10 years prior in the corporate world, or one of them was actually my wedding photographer
Oh,
who
wow.
knew me. And so these were all people that I was already connected to, that I said, hey, you know what, I'm going to be doing this social media thing and helping out. And that's how I ended up with my first 3 clients.
Yeah. You never know how it's gonna happen, and I really love how you're normalizing, like, it's no biggie if the only people that have bought from you are your close connections, like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's the same with me. My first client was my cousin's cousin, like,
Right.
so random, and then she connected me with more people in the business space because she herself was a business coach. I had only met her maybe, like, 5 times total at maybe, like, big family events. But we knew of each other, and that's just how it happens, and so without that connection, I probably wouldn't have started a business, and so I really love how you are putting that out there and normalizing that because it is normal.
It's totally normal, and I still remember the day that a stranger on the internet hired me or, like, bought my course.
Mhm.
I remember being like, "Oh my god, a complete stranger has just purchased from me, like, I am doing it. I am doing the things," and, it was a couple months into running my business, but, like, that's a big deal. It's a big deal to get to a point where you have done the legwork for someone who has never met you ever, to
Yeah.
say, you know what, I'm going to open up my wallet and give you some money. I trust you enough to make this exchange. And it is a big part of it. Like, every business owner, like, and I would challenge anybody that's listening to this right now, your friend, the person that you respect as a business owner, ask them who bought from them first. I'm willing to bet it's someone that they knew. I don't
Yeah.
know anybody whose story begins with, I just posted online and complete strangers came my way. Like, it's
Right.
really, really rare.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, if that is happening, good for them
And if
because
that is
I
happening, please DM me because I wanna know how you did it.
exactly. Because I feel like with even with my first clients, and I'm sure with yours too, like, that was such a learning curve, and it was also such, like, a confidence mindset curve as well, and
Yeah,
so, really getting in the position for strangers to hire me was a whole thing in its own. That could be a whole 'nother episode of, like
that is a whole other episode for sure.
Yeah. So, one of the things that I think is really cool about your businesses, like past and current, is how when you were running the gym, you had a community there.
Yeah.
And now in your online business, you have also started a new community where
Mhm.
you niche down to moms. And, one of the things I saw on your website that I'm not a mom, but on your website, I saw that like motherhood and entrepreneurship normally are not thought of in one sentence. And that's true. I mean, entrepreneurship is a lot of work, and thinking about my future, I'm like, how on earth would I have kids with, running my business? And so it's awesome that you have this community to support women. And I would love for you to tell more about that community, why you created it, and really like all about it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah, you know what? It's so funny. People will say to me often, no, I'm so sorry about your gym. And they hear that it closed down. And I'm always like, no, it's fine. Like, I'm good. But the
Mhm.
thing that I missed was really like the community. It's seeing people every day, and it's feeling like you're connected to something, and that there's something like greater than, it's not just a gym. It's like really a safe place for people to come. And so I have been building, I launched my podcast, This Mother Means Business, a year ago.
Mhm.
So we're on I think episode 80 maybe comes out this week. I don't know when this episode's going to launch.
Yeah.
It'll be maybe episode 85 or something like that by the time this episode launches. And I started at the same time doing these free just networking calls because, entrepreneurship can feel really lonely.
Mhm.
But I had someone say to me, entrepreneurship is only as lonely as you make it. And I was meeting and connecting with a lot of really cool women that I was meeting at like mastermind events or at events that I would go to, or just people I was connecting with online. And my clients, I tend to attract a lot of the same type of human, right? Like women that just get it, that are cool, that are a little bit like more down to earth. Literally, like I would want to go and hang out with my clients. And what was happening was some of my clients were organically connecting with each other and then like becoming besties and going into business together. And I was like, this is crazy. Like, I need to foster this. Like, if this is happening in these small little sections, like, what if I actually formalized this and made it a thing where people can come together and support each other? And so it started with just these free connection calls. And then I was really feeling like, you know what, this has to be bigger than this. And I never got into this space to just support moms. That was like not the plan. But
Mhm.
it became this thing that just kept showing up for me over and over and over because I have two little kids. And there truly is this difference between like when you're an entrepreneur and a mom, like you can't understand what that's like until you're an entrepreneur and a mom. And there's this level of like emotional responsibility, this like invisible load that you're always carrying when you're a mom. And then entrepreneurship is also this thing that you never really turn off. Like there's, you know, whether you're on it's the weekend and you're not really supposed to be working or whatever, I'm not going to shoot anybody, but when you're at the spa, you're thinking about
Mhm.
work. You're lying in bed, you're thinking about work. Well, motherhood is also like that. You're like lying in bed and thinking about the things you have to do for your kids tomorrow, or this emotional response that you had. Like there's this constant web, and it's messy and it's sticky and it's complicated. And I was having these conversations kind of in private. And then I started the podcast and I was having these conversations out loud, and people were coming to me saying, like, thank gosh you're having this. Like I needed to hear this. And so just last month, we opened the doors to the This Mother Means Business community, which is a space for entrepreneurial mothers to come together and receive like real business advice that actually makes sense. And I'm the last person that will ever tell you that motherhood should look a certain way or that entrepreneurship needs to look a certain way. But truly, like I made more money in my business when I became a mom because I
Mm.
learned how to be extremely efficient. I learned how to only do the work that is necessary in my business rather than like making work for myself. I learned how to delegate in a meaningful way. I learned how to actually prioritize myself and how to take care of myself as the owner, as like the hub, the energy through which my business runs. And so the community is a space for women to come together and receive that kind of support. We also have masterminding calls where we do and really pour into each other's businesses and really like tapping into this idea that entrepreneurship doesn't have to be lonely. And it's still in its early stages. I'm excited to see what it looks like in a year. Building a low ticket. When I say low ticket, it's $97 a month, $67 a month right now, but we'll go up to $97 a month. Building an offer like that takes time. Making something like that profitable takes time. You have to have quite a large audience for that to be like a profitable thing, but it's something that I am going all in on and will be all in on for the next while. And so if you're listening and you're a mom and you're an entrepreneur, it really, the stage of your business, I would say most women in that are sort of early stage into mid stage entrepreneurship, sort of under that 7-figure mark, and really just looking for places to grow together. But nothing makes me happier truly than the women in my world working together. I mean, there's a woman who has been a client. She's been in my mastermind for 2 rounds. She was a mastermind 2 rounds ago. I run a 6-month mastermind. She was in that. Then she became a one-on-one client. Then she went back into my mastermind. She's a member of the community, and she just hired a fractional CFO for her business who is in the This Mother Means Business
Oh my
community.
gosh,
She
amazing.
just bought a house, and the mortgage broker she used is in the This Mother Means Business community, and so it's
Wow.
just really cool for me, like, I get more excited about that stuff than I do making sales in my business, truly, like, hearing that women have connected and hired each other because of me literally makes me happier than anybody paying me any dollar amount, because it's like, that's a true ripple effect. It's not just about me, that's about the greater sum, and for me, that's always
Mhm.
gonna be what motivates me.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that. And, you know, you run these 3 different parts of your business. You have the mastermind, you have the community, which, connects to the podcast, and then you also have your agency. I would
Yeah.
love to hear more about, like, how do you manage it all?
Yeah. I have a team, and I'm also really intentional about how I run my agency. And so agencies are one of those interesting things where your agency can be a beast or it doesn't have to be.
Mhm.
And there are two different models that you can run an agency, right? You can run a lower ticket, like a high volume model where you've got, 50 clients and you kind of run it as like, I don't want to use the word factory because that's not really fair, but you run it where it's like you're the figurehead and then you're passing off work to everybody else and you have to have a lot of volume in order to cover your costs. I don't run that model. So I run what I call a boutique model. We don't run a huge client load. We're a relatively high ticket agency. We're not inexpensive because I actually want to have my hands on client work. If you're coming into the agency, you're probably hiring me. And so I don't want to just hand you off to somebody else. Now, I do have a team. I do have a team that's executing the work and then it flows through me, right? Where I'm the one that's saying like, "Hey, here's a strategy, now go do." So I'm well supported that way. And I'm also like, I have learned, I mean, I'm 37 years old. I have learned a lot about my energy. I've learned about what works for me. I have really solid boundaries in my business. I price myself accordingly to reflect those boundaries and my energy. And so it's a lot of like kind of checking myself to make sure that I have all those boundaries in place. I'm working with the right types of people, that my team is empowered, and trying not to overdo it too much.
Yes, yes, because it's so easy to overdo, but I'm sure the women in your community, like, yes, you're the host of this community, and yes, you're the host of your podcast, but I'm sure you're learning from every single one
Oh
of
my
them.
gosh, all of them.
Yeah.
It's so cool. Like, it really is the coolest thing. And I'm a person who, when I was younger, or probably when I was your age, I probably wasn't really, I would not have been a person that would have done well to build community. Like, I used to have like relatively competitive feeling relationships with other women. I never really felt like it was safe for me to do that.
Mm.
And now, there's this thing called the sister wound, which is essentially like the ways that the patriarchy essentially pits women against each other. And I definitely had a big one when I was in my 20s, right? Where it was like, and certainly growing up in like marketing agencies and PR agencies, they're pretty cutthroat environments where, women were stepping on other women to get ahead. And
Yeah.
so now I'm just not in that season. And so it's actually really healing for me to have this community in a lot of ways, because it's a reflection of the work that I've done around women. Like, I want nothing more than to see other women win. Like,
Mhm.
nothing more. I want my clients to make more money than me. I want them to out earn me. I want them to outgrow me, actually. Like, I want them to get to a place where I am no longer the correct mentor for them.
Mm.
I want them to need to hire a mentor who is further along than me. I can get you to a place where you're making multi six, seven figures in your business. But if I've never built a $10 million business. And so, when you get to that place in your business where you're ready to go for, your 7 figure year or your multi 7 figure year, you're going to need somebody else. And I
Yeah.
and I want that. Like, that's my job. If you're with me for 5 years and your business never grows, like, I'm not doing a good job. And so for me, I really just want to see other women win. It makes me the happiest.
I love that, and that really shows that you are in the right industry and you are in the right space and you are creating the right communities around you to empower other women, and yeah, I mean, I totally see that competition in entrepreneurship, and I think since I am in such, like, a niche area of entrepreneurship, I don't necessarily feel competitive,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
There's a good side of that. There's a side where I wish I was a little bit more competitive myself, but, we learn as we go, but
Yeah.
I really love how you this is, like, the premise of everything that you do, and now you can show other women and moms really, like, the ropes that you went through.
Yeah, and I've been through a lot of things, and I think I've had a lot of success, and I've also had a lot of things not go very well. Things that, a lot of people would label as failure. I mean, I had to close a business in 2020. It was my choice, but a lot of people could look at that as failure. I've had business relationships that have gone sour. I've had, legal involved. Like I've done all of those things.
Yeah.
And so, I've had, oh gosh, I think about even when I bought my gym. Running a gym is really interesting because a gym is, in a lot of ways, you touch almost everything in running a brick and mortar business that you would in business, period. Like
Mm.
employees, retail, marketing, sales, operations, logistics, like supply chain, like there's so
Yeah.
many things that you touch in running a gym. And I bought an existing business that was failing. And so there was a lot of things that went wrong that when I bought the gym, I had to clean up. And I was learning about these things for the first time. And, so I made mistakes in that space. I made mistakes with partnerships. I made mistakes with even building my online business. And so, I don't know how much you know about human design. It's something that I'm kind of learning about, but
Yeah.
my human design apparently is that I'm supposed to do that. I'm supposed to try things and fail and then tell other people about them. That's what
Amazing.
I was apparently pulled on this earth to do, according to human design. And so I really allow like the things that I've gone through, for better or for worse, be the things that allow me to help other women business owners
Mhm.
hopefully avoid some of those things and to get there faster than I did.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. So, Laura, one of the things that you mentioned at the beginning of the episode was how someone came to you and they spent $10,000 on local news advertising.
Yeah.
And I would love, like, that just popped into my head. And I was like, okay, we need to learn more about Laura's businesses before I can ask her this. But now that we know what you do and all about that,
Yeah.
if you had $10,000 to spend to grow your business, how
Yeah.
would you spend that?
That's such a great question. So right now, in this exact season of my business,
Mhm.
I would spend that money on ads.
Okay.
That's me because I've just launched this community.
Hmm.
I've got some great women in it. And in order for me, I'm in a season of my business where in order for me to amplify that, I would spend it on digital ads. Not let's be clear. Let me clarify what type of ads.
Yes, yes.
Not local television ads. I would probably spend them on probably a mix of like Google ads and some Meta ads, somewhere in there, driving towards my community. That is what I would spend the money on. But I think, for somebody that's just starting out, I think it's like it could be a lot of things, right? So when we think about and this is something that, this is for anyone listening to like assess. If someone were to give you $10,000, where do you need to spend? It could be really different, right? You might be in a place where you need to invest in knowledge. You need to learn something. Like there's a knowledge gap that you have between where you are right now and where you need to go. And that could be, it's probably not a course. It might be a course, but it's probably not a course. Don't buy another course. We all have a course graveyard. Don't do it. But it might be mentorship, right? It might be, doing a strategy call with somebody. It may be like access to a person who has information that you maybe need to get you to the next step. It could be on going to like joining a mastermind. It could be going to events, right? If you have a business that, you do really well networking, it'd be events. Like if it wasn't digital ads, if you had asked me that question 6 months ago, pre-community, I would say that I would spend that money on tickets to events where my ideal client
Mm,
is.
okay.
That's what I
Yeah.
would spend the $10,000 on 6 months ago before the community existed, because I think that there's so much power in getting in front of people. And I know for myself, part of my magic is in person.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that's what I would spend my money on.
Very cool. I love
Yeah,
how, it always shifts, and I
always.
wish we had an extra 10K each month to just spend however we
Same.
wanted, and I mean, that'd be I think for me, I would spend it on growing a team. That would be, like, the
Yeah, that's
place
another
that I would
question.
spend it in,
Yeah.
like, right now in business, and I'm sure, 6 months ago it was something else, 6 months later it'll be something else, but right now it would definitely be growing a team, and so I love how, every business owner it probably has a different answer for every stage of business that they're at.
Yeah.
But it's always good to know if that is where you want to spend your money, taking the steps to actually do that. Maybe it's not $10,000, but maybe it's something else. Maybe it's an action. Maybe it's a smaller amount of money. I always think it's good to think like big picture and then narrow down to see like
Totally.
what's actually important to you.
Totally. Being big picture is hard for some people, right?
Yeah.
There are some people that, get really caught in the weeds, and there's other people that are a little too big picture. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's important to look at. And that was actually the other thing I would have said. Like for a lot of people, it is delegation, right? Is like
Mhm.
having $10,000 to free up some of your time. There's a great book by somebody named Dan Martell. It's called Buy Back Your Time. I highly recommend it, but it's literally talking about how, and if you're in a season of solopreneurship, maybe it's just you running your business, chances are you're probably doing some $10 and $20 tasks, an hour tasks in your business that you could delegate out. And so looking at, okay, where can I stop doing $20 an hour tasks and maybe elevate myself out of those tasks and delegate that money to somebody else is a great use of
Yeah.
that money too.
Yeah, that's a great way to think about it. No, well, I've loved everything that we talked about so far today. And I do have a question about your podcast.
Yeah.
And, I am a podcast manager. I love talking about podcasting. And you have a niche podcast. And honestly, the more niche, in my opinion, the better because it's easier for your ideal clients to really resonate with you and, fall into a certain offer you might have or just feel nurtured. And
Yeah.
so tell me more about your podcast, why you started it, and how it helps your business.
So I love this question because I truly, and you're talking to a marketer right now who runs an online business. I did not start my podcast being like, this is going to make me a ton of money. Like it just wasn't the vibe for me. I was
Yeah.
truly starting it from a place of like, I am having these conversations with other entrepreneurial moms behind closed doors, and nobody else is talking about this. Like I haven't heard this, and not in a way that's like, I deeply love my children and I deeply love my business, but I also know that like a lot of the time when we talk about like motherhood and entrepreneurship, the energy around it is like kind of fluffy and like kind of cute and not really like, no, like I'm a legitimate business owner who happens to be a mom and I'm doing these two things and it is really friggin' hard. It's so hard. It's insane. And so for me, the podcast just started from a place of being like, if I'm having these thoughts and these other women that I'm meeting are having these thoughts, then maybe I just need to have these thoughts out loud and we'll see what happens. And so
Mhm.
that's where it started from. And it was funny because I use a podcast manager, and I remember on our kickoff call, she was like, "Why do you want to start a podcast?" And I said to her, "Well, I'm just like kind of tired of feeling like I'm the only one that's having these conversations." And she was like, "I've never heard anyone say that. Like usually people are like, I want to build my personal brand or I want to do any of that." Now, all of that said, it has been great for my business in that I have people regularly that will find my podcast and they'll say, "I just binged, the first 10 episodes. I mean, at this point we're now 80 episodes in. How do I work with you?" And so I think within my first 3 episodes dropping, I signed a private client from someone who had listened to my podcast and just really resonated with what it was that I had to say. And it's been interesting because I've also been playing around with, advertising some of my own offers and services in the podcast itself. So I run a retreat every year. I sold out my retreat last year through my own podcast ads. I have a mastermind that I run twice a year. I've got the community now. And so it also works as a little bit of a funnel for me into some of those offers through ads, but then also via lead magnet and things like that to driving people in through content that way.
Very cool. Yeah. Whenever someone comes to me to start a podcast and the first thing they say is like, oh, I want to make money from this, I'm like, red flags have been raised because that's never the reason to start, anything. It's definitely a benefit of podcasting. You can definitely make money. But number one, you have to have a passion for it and you have to want people to really feel nurtured and entertained through the podcast because, if you're 3, 4 months in and you haven't made any money, you're not going to feel inspired. So I absolutely love like the backstory of it and how it's helped you grow your business kind of unexpectedly, but in the best ways.
Yeah, it wasn't really part of the plan, and I think you're like, I love that you give people that caveat because I think it's important. It's the same with, like, social media, right? People are like, "Oh, I'm gonna hire you to hire your agency to fix the social media, and that's gonna happen overnight." Like, I am not a magic fairy. I cannot bippity boppity boo anything. Like, that's not how this works. Like, this stuff is all the long game, like, all of it, and in my mind, truly, when I launched my podcast, I was like, "If 10 people download an episode, like I will be happy." It's been way more than that. I just hit 5,000 downloads the other day, which is feels
Congrats.
pretty exciting for me, which I know maybe for some people feels like a small number, but for me that felt like a really big number. And so I'm just excited by all of the women that have come on the show, the people that have listened. It's been like for other women, but also really for me, really cathartic for me too in the process.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I love that. No, so thank you so much for sharing. Like I said, I could talk about podcasting all day, every day. So I really wanted to get into that. But I've loved this whole conversation, how you manage different areas of your business, how you built this community, like the wins and failures that you've had, but how you've come back from that has been really empowering to hear about. And so the last question I ask all of my guests to really wrap up the conversation is asking them to share 3 steps for the audience to take after this conversation's over. So after they've listened, what do you want them to do next?
Yeah. So for me, I mean, we talked about a lot of things which I love. I think for me, like the one thing that I always want to encourage people to do, and we talked about being seen and we talked about, taking action and things like that. And for me, the first one that I always want people to do is like to really take a minute and get real with yourself about like what are you avoiding?
Mhm.
What is like the big scary thing that you're avoiding right now? It could be like as simple as showing up on social media. Maybe it's starting the podcast. Maybe it's selling the offer or having a hard conversation. Like, what is the thing that you're actually avoiding right now? Because it's something. I know that it's something. We all have that thing. And so I would love for people that are listening to really just like take a second to audit that for themselves. Like, what is it that you're avoiding? And the second piece would be, if you're following along with my journey and listening to the episode, like I've taken a lot of pivots in life, right? And for me, I've sort of collected evidence along the way of like what is possible and what isn't. And I've sort of been able to prove to myself that, what, I can make change, I can do things that are different because I've done it a lot of times, whether it's going from corporate into my gym, into the online space. And so a lot of people will say, well, like I'm afraid to make a pivot or I can't make a pivot because I've never done it before. And so I think if you're in a season of your life and business or wherever you're at, where you're feeling like you want to make a change, but you don't know if you can, I would say like audit your own life, right? Like, where have you made changes in your life? Because I'm sure you have done a lot more than you're giving yourself credit for. And if there's something that you want, like go after it. We only get to do this once and we don't know when our clock's going to run out. And so do the thing. And
Yeah.
then the last one I would just say is like, where are you rushing? Where are you rushing? Where are you looking for results? Maybe too fast or in a way that's not overly realistic and that's maybe unfair. And we talked about playing this long game and like where should you really be focusing on playing the long game and just kind of like sticking your heels in and gritting it out rather than like having this expectation of these immediate results that are just really not fair.
Mhm. Yeah, I love those. Those are all really great and makes people think about what's really important to them and what really next steps they want to take because it's really common and really easy to just kind of like fall forward and just see what comes next. But planning, that takes a whole different a whole different mindset.
Yeah,
So,
we gotta be honest with ourselves, right? And I think like a lot of the time, I actually just posted on my social media today that was like, "You're gonna hate working with me if," and some of that is like, you're not willing to get uncomfortable, you're not willing to take action, you're not willing to like make those plans. Like they're all essential pieces.
yeah, they really are. So, where can people connect with you if they want to either join your community or maybe see if they're a fit for your agency or just
Yeah.
want to learn more about you?
Yeah, if you've made it this far in the episode, we are officially friends. So feel free to send me a DM on Instagram. I'm at It's Laura Sinclair. You can also find me and all about my community, my podcast at thismothermeansbusiness.com. The agency and all my links, everything are there. And they're also on my Instagram. But that is the place that I spend the most time. You can also check out my podcast, This Mother Means Business, wherever you listen to podcasts.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, I will put all of the links in the show notes. And Laura, I've loved this conversation and I'm really glad that we got to sit down together today.
Me too. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Employee to Boss podcast. If you made it to the end of this episode, I hope that you implement the actionable steps from this week's experts so you can get started with your business today. Please rate, review, and subscribe to the Employee to Boss podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. It helps more than you could ever imagine. Remember, a little progress each day leads to big results. We come out with a new episode every Tuesday. To access our show notes, transcripts, and courses, please check out espressopodcastproduction.com.